All right, welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy, weekend preview edition. Have a sip of your tea, Teddy. They have they bet the over every day. How long it's going to take for you to take a drink? Big game breakdown coming up. Deep dive, and again, everything's been talking about Nevada the last week on the show. Looks like daily fantasy back in play in Nevada. We'll discuss that in the deep dive and try to make it 4 in a row with the play of the day. Bad beats and bad bets coming up. No knee-jerk reactions. We'll recap the draft on Monday.
Yeah, and that's key. You know, there's so much for the NBA draft where everyone's just auto-reacting this, that, the other. We're going to take a day. You know, we're going to take the weekend, really analyze what happened over the course of that wild draft last night, and give you a thorough breakdown on Monday's show. But not knee-jerk reactions. That's what the networks do. That's not what we do here on SportsBit.
Well, let's start with bad bets. Money came in on the under in the Twins game. Bet down from 8.5 to 8. Another Twins over.
What is it? 16-1-1 to the over now of the last 18. And of course,
wow.
Remember, oftentimes the broader markets aren't going to react to the same things that you and I react to, Paul. We're trying to cherry pick games. The broader markets often auto bet a lot of games. And what do they auto bet in particular? How about getaway day unders? You know, when a series ends, they play that day game. Everyone's trying to get out of town. And there's a lot of auto bets for the under when it comes to these getaway, especially early start getaway games. That being said, you just can't bet the Twins under right now. 16-1-1 the last 18, Paul. And this is just one of a number of huge total streaks that we can talk about on this show.
Yeah, and they're ignoring a very bad bullpen. Jepsen came in the 8th with his 6 ERA. 6 and change ERA. Nice little celebration when we were having lunch today. Bam, 3-run shot puts it over. And you're right, you get these runs like Seattle had and like that A's team in 2011, and a lot of people don't even pay attention to it.
No, and of course, I mean, 2011 A's are worth mentioning here because that was one of the legendary runs. Over a 34-game span, they cashed 3 under bets. It was post-All-Star break, and I remember riding that streak and making a small fortune in doing so. And again, these are just the ones that stand out. There are always these little total runs that go 8, 10, 12 games that you can hop on and hop off. But when you have cashing 3 under tickets in a 34-game span, or right now where the Twins have cashed 1 under ticket in an 18-game span, these are the type of runs that are supposed to put a lot of money in your pocket, Paulie. And of course, it's usually around this type of year when the baseline totals are already well established and the weather is heating up. And boy, when the weather heats up, the pitchers start to get worn down. But should we talk about baseline totals here for a moment, Paul?
Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, basically every team is going to have a quote-unquote baseline total for their home ballpark. When you see Dodgers games in L.A., they're going to be lined at 6.5. And then they're going to adjust based on the opposing pitcher, the opposing lineup, and, you know, if Kershaw's going versus a second-tier starter, the numbers get adjusted there. But the Dodgers' baseline total is usually in that 6.5, 7 range at home. And you can go on through the 32 MLB teams, or the 30 MLB teams. Everyone's got a baseline total. And those baseline totals become pretty firm by this stage of the season. Now, those numbers do adjust, again, based on an individual starting pitching matchup, but they never adjust based on, oh, this bullpen stinks, or, oh, not only does this bullpen stink, they're also completely gassed. The baseline totals really are based on what the markets think this team should be totaled at. And when you find these short-term streaks, and short-term can be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even longer sometimes, boy, you can really take advantage of the market's reluctance to move significantly away from that quote-unquote baseline total.
More bad bets. How about the Pirates? We talked on SportsBit yesterday about the Pirates and their 2-12 run since they swept that doubleheader against the Mets and that brutal schedule that was coming up. The markets weren't watching, but obviously you were, so you were surprised that the Pirates went from $1.10 to $1.45.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, the markets don't watch SportsBit every day. Hopefully, we've got an audience, and we're building an audience that is watching SportsBit every day and can take advantage of some of this information. Yeah, the Pirates got bet up from -110 to -145 in that early betting action. And, of course, San Fran sat a ton of guys. That was what it was about, you know. Gregor Blanco and Angel Pagan and Crawford and Belt all sat. It didn't matter. It's a classic hot versus not matchup. San Fran now 12-2 in their last 14. The Pirates are falling apart 2-13 in their last 15. And when it's hot versus not for me, Paul, it takes something special to put me on the not. Most of the time, I'd rather be on the hot. The markets fell in love with the not yesterday, and it cost them. Worth noting, Alberto Suarez is now 3-1 with a 3.68 ERA. The market's viewing him as a throwaway hurler. He might be a keeper in that San Fran rotation.
That is worth noting. How about what happened in the Seattle-Detroit game? Samson got hurt warming up, didn't throw a pitch?
Yeah, quote, was no pop or anything, just a little discomfort. Felt it was best if I just come out of the game. Of course, he didn't actually throw a pitch. He just had discomfort in his right elbow while warming up for the first. So what happens? Nuno fills in, and he becomes the official starters. But the sportsbooks couldn't produce a new opening line because the game was already in progress. So basically, pretty much every wager got canceled. If you listed pitchers, all the run line wagers got canceled. All the total wagers got canceled. But we talk about charting and not looking at the stats without having an idea of what they mean. You don't want to list this as a start for Nuno. This is more like a long relief appearance. That's the way I've graded it, even though when you look at his numbers, you're going to see this graded as a start in those mainstream stats. Worth noting, the Tigers walked off on a wild pitch and the first 4-game sweep at home versus Seattle since 1980. But you saw that quote from James McCann, man. Tigers are rolling right now.
Yeah, here's the quote. There's a different feel in the clubhouse. He also had a home run. I don't really know what the right word is other than the way the guys walk around, a different swag about our team. That's Mariners now with 6 straight losses, 6-16 in June. I mean, nothing's going right. Even Cano couldn't get a guy in from third base in extras.
No, I mean, yeah, exactly. Cano's got someone in on third. We talked about how good Cano had been hitting and the special seasons he's having on yesterday's show. Didn't matter. 2 home runs from Nelson Cruz. Didn't matter. What happened in that all-important 10th? Well, not only was it the wild pitch from Steve Cishek, who now has 4 blown saves his last 11 chances, the way the runners got to second and third was an error. Bad defense, unclutch hitting, poor relief pitching. Seattle falling apart right now, and the Mariners and Tigers definitely trending in opposite directions.
Big game breakdown up next. Indians and the Tigers and the Astros and the Royals. Plus, we'll get to daily fantasy in the deep dive and try to make it 4 in a row. On SportsBit, betting insight today.
Always on the go? Bet365 has one of the top mobile platforms in today's market. Sign up today and don't let your busy life keep you out of the game.
Back on SportsBet, as always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Indians, Tigers, Salazar against Zimmerman, $5, 8 the total. Indians out on the road now after that 6-0 homestand when they won by 27 runs. The Tigers out for revenge after getting swept 9-4, 4-0, and 7-3 at Cleveland in early May. Salazar still searching for his control, but his stuff hard to hit as anybody in the American League, Teddy.
Oh, it sure is. And, again, you look at the Salazar progression. Take a look at this graph. And, again, this is a guy that's always had nasty stuff. This is the first year he's really putting it together. 2014, he's 6-8 with a 4.25 ERA. Last year, he wins 14 games. The ERA drops to 3.45. This year, 8-3, 2.23. The guy's been phenomenal. Now, he's still walking too many batters, 4.2 walks per 9 innings, but he's absolutely keeping the ball out of play. Nearly 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. One thing worth noting, though, he really hasn't felt pressure in a while. The last 4 starts were kind of like that first series they had against Detroit, where they won every game by 4 runs or more. Last 4 starts, Indians have won 11-4, 6-1, 8-3, and 13-2. So he hasn't been in a lot of tight, pressure-packed situations.
Well, and certainly there was pressure on Zimmerman this year, signing that huge deal, and he's earned his paycheck with the Tigers.
Yeah, he sure has. I mean, Salazar might not get the run support he's grown accustomed to because of how well Zimmerman has been pitching. 9-3, I should say, with a 2.24 ERA. He's already worked 86 innings. And he's a very different type of pitcher than Salazar. Salazar is going to overpower hitters. He's going for that strikeout every time. When we talk about Zimmerman, he doesn't overpower anyone, but he doesn't walk anyone either. 1.7 walks per 9 innings, that prevents big innings. And, of course, the Indians hitters haven't seen him a whole lot. He's coming over from the National League, and despite this being the 3rd series between these 2 teams, Zimmerman didn't work in either of the first 2. There is a concern here, though. Zimmerman has not really settled in at Comerica Park yet. Sharp, home road split. He's got a .96 ERA on the road, Pauly, but 4.43 at home. Not nearly as good in front of the home fans as he's been in hostile environments.
LiveOddsSportsbookReview.com. How about the Astros and the Royals? Keuchel against Volquez. Keuchel $1.20, 8.5 the total. A big question now. Are the Astros back? Have they stepped their game up, or was it just the right place, right time in that homestand against the Reds and the Angels?
Well, I mean, we can ask the same question about Keuchel. You know, I mean, did he turn things around against Cincinnati last Saturday, or was it just him being at home versus a relatively weak team and a relatively weak lineup? And the answer is maybe. You know, I mean, we've been telling you about his home road splits all year. You know, the guy's 2-6 with a 5.91 ERA on the highway this season. He lost the last two at Texas and at Tampa Bay, but kind of tricky reads in those ball games. 17 strikeouts versus only 2 walks in those 2 contests combined, but the contact made was unfavorable. Let's just put it that way. He was unlucky every bit as much as he was ungood in those last 2 road starts against the Rangers and Rays.
Everyone likes the home cooking, and we love the Kansas City barbecue, but Volquez, how about these home road splits from this guy?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a monster. You know, look at 2016. On the road, he's got an ERA over 6. At home, he's 5-2 with a 2.61. That's a significant home road split. But I want to get back to that very first question that we asked.
Okay.
About, is this a sign that Houston's coming alive, or do they just get the right teams at the right time? And we kept on, you know, we've kind of been saying this for the first few months of the season. Here come the Astros, here come the Astros, here come the Astros. They haven't been able to put it all together for any kind of extended stretch yet. They're back around 500, and they're certainly a team that feels good about what they've been through early on in the campaign. And they're also some pretty good positive signs when it comes to Houston and their bullpen. In fact, the best battle of all in this game might not even come from the starters tonight.
Yeah. You know, not to mention, even if you're 10 games back, to hell with it. You got the wild card, and everyone's involved in the AL wild card, it seems.
Yeah, and that's why the bad teams in the AL are bet against all the way. But you look at these 2 bullpens, you know, KC with the edge in ERA. Houston with the edge in fielding and pitching. Houston with the edge in wins above replacement. But we're talking about 2 bullpens that are absolutely elite. And, of course, both teams had Thursday off. So every reliever comes in rested and ready.
Good info there. Up next, deep dive, daily fantasy in Nevada, and we try to make it 4 in a row with the play of the day on Sportsbet. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
All right, deep dive, time for daily fantasy, and it in play here with Paramutual in Nevada. First things first, Teddy, tell people about Vic Salerno.
Yeah, and Vic Salerno is the guy that's pushing this concept, the U.S. Fantasy. He just got licensed by I shouldn't say that. He got a recommendation for licensure from the Nevada Gaming Control Board. We would expect that to come very shortly. But, I mean, Vic Salerno is as old school get. He's a brilliant guy. He started the Leroy's betting chain here in Nevada, the first kiosk betting in Nevada. He got a nice fat paycheck, got bought out by William Hill, and he's looking for one last score. But, I mean, Vic is an old-time Italian guy. The first time I met him was in, like, an Italian restaurant that I was convinced there was bodies buried all over the place back there. And I was, like, walking in there, I'm like, why does he want to meet me? I was nervous, you know, because sometimes, you know, Paul, sometimes you and I say stuff off the cuff, and I'm sure that I said something bad about Leroy sooner or later. And it's all good. A truly nice gentleman, and he's doing a ton for fantasy betting and fantasy bettors, not just here in Nevada, Pauly. This has the legit potential to go nationwide, and not long-term either. We're talking short-term.
U.S. Fantasy is going to provide a menu of daily and weekly fantasy sports contests that will include NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and other sports. No immediate plans for college at this time. Earlier this month, the Nevada Gaming Control Board gave its recommendation, but Salerno wants to launch the concept in August, starting with MLB and then transition to the NFL in September, and the other sports would join in once they get going, Teddy.
Now, this is not DraftKings. This is not FanDuel. This is not, all right, they're going to set up a price and we're going to pick a lineup. This is pari-mutuel wagering, okay, which is a whole different concept. The lines adjust throughout the course of the day based on how the money comes in. Parimutuel betting's done in horse racing, obviously, where the takeout is as high as 25% on some wagers. The fantasy takeout is supposed to be in the 10% range, which is not brilliant, but reasonable. And of course, people can wager as little as $1 and make picks on groups for an athletes. They're doing first, second, and third, win, place, and show. They can do combos just like in horse racing. You can do exactas. You can do trifectas. It's kind of an interesting concept. Salerno's quote, "Instead of calling them races, we would call them events. The first race, instead of having horses, we list the top 20 quarterbacks in the NFL. And you can bet on them. The public decides who the favorite's going to be. If everyone keeps betting on Tom Brady, he becomes even money or 6-5 or something like that." It's very different from the DraftKings and the FanDuel type of fantasy operations. And of course, those fantasy operations are in jeopardy nationwide. They've already been outlawed here in the state of Nevada, at least for the short term.
And worth noting, though this is not a surprise, another quote from Salerno: "I've talked to several of the casinos and have not heard one negative thing about it. They all seem that they want the product added to their menus." Well, yeah, of course. People can't wait to do this.
Yeah, of course. We got more Salerno quotes. Quote, "We want to keep it as easy as possible for everyone to understand, yet still be challenging enough for the people that really study it more to also have a good shot at it. The difference between us and FanDuel and DraftKings is that in ours, there'll be 80% of the people getting the money back and not 2 to 5% of the people getting the money back." And that's obviously been one of the biggest criticisms about FanDuel and DraftKings. The pros have beaten the Joes pretty badly. And that, again, in this type of a format, number one, I'm not so sure the pros are going to get involved on a significant basis. They don't tend to get involved in parimutuel stuff. And number two, you would expect more democracy in where the payouts actually go.
And a friend of mine, Jay Cornegay, over at the Westgate, Vice President of Race and Sports Operations, they got this big meeting coming up. He respects Vic. He calls this brilliant and wonders why they didn't think of it before.
Yeah, quote, "This offering that Vic is presenting is different from our race product. It's going to have large fields. The takeouts are a lot less than at a normal track, and it receives a lot of coverage, so people will be familiar with the names that are in these pools." So there's 3 other things to talk about besides Vic Salerno and the fact that, guess what? Real betting on fantasy is coming. Nationwide, parimutuel could happen very quickly because when you think about all the struggles that horse racing is having, all the parimutuel associations and the debt that they're in, they need the revenue. So they're going to jump on this, Pauly. But there's a Nevada conundrum when it comes down to it. We don't know exactly as a state what the best thing for us is to do.
Yeah, do you give away those revenues in order to accelerate the process, or do you gut it out and try to make Nevada a hosting site from all the other states?
Yeah, and that's the key for the states, because a lot of different states are trying to draft their own fantasy legislation, and that's just stupid. They're not necessarily good at it. They don't know anything about it. If they rubber stamp the Nevada parimutuel model, they save the time and trouble of writing and enforcing their own rules. So if this Nevada parimutuel model comes quickly, and we think it will, again, we're talking about August. We're not talking about 2017, 2018. We're talking about right away for this coming football season. But long term, we got to show that Nevada can properly handle the processing. And one of the biggest fears of sports betting is put to rest, Existing parimutuel laws already allow for one-on-one match races. This is going to be fun. Brady attempts, completions, touchdowns, yards versus Andrew Luck head-to-head. Man, that's already on the books. It's a step away from traditional sports betting. I think this had potential to be a lot of fun, Pauly, and maybe offer some pretty good paydays.
Yeah, and an absolute monster, and you see the success of daily fantasy as well. All right, money time. Play of the day. Going for 4 in a row. And you know where we're going. 16-1-1 in the last 18. Betting number 917, 918. Twins, Yankees, over 8.5. There's even some 8s out there. And again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, Teddy.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. We're going to ride this Twins over. If you get sick of winning tickets, all right, go watch a different show. In the meantime, we'll keep riding Minnesota over the total. 8.5, the prevailing line. That's our play of the day right here on the Weekend Preview Show.
All right, thanks for watching. Big week coming up. We got Phil Steele. We'll talk college football. We'll get back to our NFL division previews. All that coming up next week on SportsBit. Betting Insight today.